Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Andy Behrens, Sal Vetri. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Thursday. You're still full from all your Christmas food, and we're here to get you caught up for everything you need to know for championship weekend in the fantasy football world. Sal, as we were coming to air, you informed me today is National Candy Cane Day. Here's the important question. Does anybody want to be given a candy cane after Christmas? Like if I walk up to you and present you with a candy cane post-Christmas Day, are you going to be excited for said candy cane?
I'm glad you brought this up, Fitz. I don't even know if you have to add the boundaries of post-Christmas Day. Although the candy cane is beautiful in design, it's a sorry excuse for a piece of candy, in my humble opinion, if we're talking about the classic version. But to those that are celebrating, happy National Candy Cane Day today. It is a big day, December 26th, so enjoy.
It's also National Boxing Day, although there was no boxing today. I know everybody's made that joke. Andy Behrens, does that candy cane put Sal on the naughty or nice list?
Well, I would personally never disrespect candy canes on their holiday, on National Candy Cane Day. That's a choice that Sal has made. I'm just over here fired up for some Bears primetime football. That's all I can think about.
Well, neither of you win the Buddy the Elf Award for fantasy football this year. You guys can get involved. Use the hashtag AskFFL. Drop some questions in the YouTube chat. I'm already in there talking to you about candy cane, so I'll be looking down and looking at it throughout. We will get your questions answered, but we're here because you are stressed. We are stressed. We're all stressed because it's championship weekend and we got Thursday night football. Let's take a look at this absolutely marquee matchup, better than candy canes. Seahawks at Bears. Okay, I'm being a little sarcastic this week. Seahawks favored by 4. The over-under on this 42. Shout out to my buddy Mike that's at this game. The weather, 45 degrees. I'm going to say that's sneaky warm for what we expected in a game like this at Soldier Field. Maybe plays to the Seahawks' advantage. Let's take a look at some players to watch. Andy Behrens, who do you got for me?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Keenan Allen, and he has certainly not had a perfect season to this point. He's battled injuries. He's had some uncharacteristic drops, has not always been in sync with his rookie quarterback. But Keenan is also coming off one of the better games I have personally seen by a Bears receiver in my many years watching this team. Last week against Detroit, a season-high 9 catches for 141 yards, had a long touchdown included on a beautiful deep ball from Caleb. Over his last 5 games, Allen has seen 54 targets. He's caught 32 of them, scored 5 touchdowns, has 4 games with 70 or more receiving yards. There are simply not many receivers delivering numbers like this right now. We have arrived at the point, I think, where Allen clearly needs to be the top-ranked Bears receiver for fantasy, based not only on volume, but also the consistency of his recent production. When healthy, he still clearly has a lot to offer. He's earning double-digit targets every week. This has not been, a dream season for Chicago by any means, but Allen has been a definite bright spot over the past month, and I think you can play him with confidence in this one.
Andy, I say this lovingly, but saying one of the better Chicago Bears wide receivers I've seen in the last few years is like saying that's one of the better fruitcakes I've had over the last year. I'm just saying.
It's fair.
All right, when we talk players to watch, I think if this can be good or bad, and certainly a key in this game is going to be Zach Charbonnet, because Kenneth Walker III has been put on injury reserve. He's done. So whatever the Seahawks are going to be doing moving forward will be with Zach Charbonnet. There's no longer some concern about target share. There's no longer any conversation about who's going to get the carries where. From a fantasy standpoint, Zach Charbonnet is going to eat because Zach Charbonnet has to eat. How often do I talk about the fact that on a short week for Thursday Night Football, the simplest thing to do is try and run the football? Now, Charbonnet's not coming off of any epic performance last week, but realistically, they didn't run the ball particularly well as a team last week. But they're taking on a Bears defense that's in the bottom 3rd in rushing yards, bottom 3rd in rushing touchdowns, bottom 3rd in average rushing yardage per attempt, bottom 3rd everywhere, basically. So it feels like this is an opportunity for Charbonnet to eat a little extra turkey. Sal, give us a player that you've got your eye on.
Yeah, I'm looking at Jackson Smith and Jigba. And look, the NFL season is so long. A lot happens in just a month, let alone 17 games. And JSN is the perfect example of that. The first month of the season, he was a boomer bust wide receiver 3 and really played second fiddle for most of the year to DK Metcalf until Metcalf went down with injury. Then JSN breaks out in week 9, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of the best performances we've seen all year for a wide receiver. And the big question was, will this continue when DK Metcalf returns? And that's exactly what's happened these past 2 months. During that span, JSN leads the Seahawks, averaging 15.7 fantasy points per game. That's also top 5 amongst all fantasy wide receivers these past 2 months, up there with the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, and Jamar Chase. That's how good he's been during this stretch. And tonight he gets a Bears secondary that allows the second most receiving yards per play. I think it's going to be a nice opportunity, again, for the Seattle team who's throwing over 35 times per game to target JSN another 8 to 12 times. He's somebody who is definitely in your lineups at this point, breaking out right now, and the same will be true heading into his third season next year.
All right, Sal, with that being in mind, we'll stick with you for a second because Ferns in the YouTube chat has asked a question. Pick one. DK Metcalf, Tyjae Spears, or Isaac Guerrero. Want to stay on this game for a second. Ask FFL. What do you think, Sal? Metcalf, Spears, Guerrero?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Metcalf here in this game tonight. Guerrero's dealing with multiple injuries to his hamstring and his foot, and we still don't know the status of Tony Pollard. He's not practicing, but if he does play, that really hurts Spears' upside. So I'll take the sure thing in DK Metcalf, who, despite JSN outproducing him the last 2 months, is still a top 20 receiver heading into this week.
All right, let's get to some props. It's time to bring the props where we come down the chimney with the big old sack of presents known as prop bets that we like. Andy has had the largest of all of the toy sacks so far with 9 correct so far this year. Sal with 8 right behind him. We won't talk about where I am in this process, but that's okay. Sometimes it takes a big effort at the end of the year. Look, I just said that the Seahawks are going to try and run the football, and I do believe that. But let's be real. We're talking props tonight. I'm talking about Geno Smith over 1.5 passing touchdowns because, let's face it, the way you get to Geno is if you can sack him. Like, that offensive line for the Seahawks is a problem. Thing is, the Bears' defensive line is middle of the road when it comes to producing any sort of pressure on the quarterback. So Geno's going to have a little bit more opportunity to throw the football. They still throw the football a lot. So I'd like Geno to be able to get a couple of touchdowns in this one because I don't think he'll be disrupted at the same level. Frankly, if he is, the Seahawks are going to have to ask themselves some tough questions about how they intend to compete moving forward. Andy Behrens, you are the leader of all of the props. Give us the prop of all props.
Yeah, Sal has already talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like the over on his receiving yardage. Now, when I got this, it was 68.5. It's ticked up just a little bit. Man, he's done this in 8 straight games. He's so much better than this total. In that 8-game stretch, he's averaging 96.3 receiving yards. JSN is still thriving with DK Metcalf back in the mix. No worries there. He's been one of the breakout stars of 2024, an absolute locked-in wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And listen, whatever you thought of this Bears defense in the first half of the season, you had better rethink it because over the past 5 weeks, they have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, and 6 different wideouts have cleared this receiving total. JSN has been winning at every level of the field, terrific after the catch. We've seen him win in contested situations. He's seen a dozen targets in each of his last 2 games. At this point, 70 yards and a touchdown is actually kind of a quiet game for JSN. He should clear this total with ease.
Yeah, and if that could include a couple touchdowns, we all win. All right, Sal, there are 2 teams involved in this game. Why don't you give us somebody you've got your eye on that maybe plays for the other side?
Yeah, let's look at the Bears quarterback, Caleb Williams here. I'm going to be taking his over 20.5 completions tonight. And this is a pretty unique spot that we don't see all too often, maybe 1 or 2 times a week in the NFL. And it's going to be a home underdog. The Bears are 3-point home underdogs this week. And historically speaking, whether it's fantasy, betting, just real life production, it's a good spot for quarterbacks. In the last 3 years, over the last 3 years, quarterbacks in similar situations as home underdogs are averaging over 23 completions per game. We see a large uptick in passing volume, which makes sense as an underdog in a comfortable environment at home. And over the past month, the Seahawks allow over 22 completions per game. And the other thing here that's really important is the Seahawks, their defense has been up and down this year. They hit a strong point in the middle of the season coming out of the bye, kind of cooled off the last couple of weeks, but all season long, their pass rush hasn't been there. And that's the key for the Bears and Caleb Williams tonight. Matchups against weak pass rushes, like week 5 against the Panthers, he goes for 300 yards. Week 6 against the Jaguars, throws 4 touchdowns. That's when he has time. He looks really good, and this whole offense looks good. I'm expecting him to have time tonight and clear 20.5 completions.
All right, before we leave this game, let's get a question from the YouTube chat. Oakley Sutherland has asked, half PPR, need 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, right? And these are our options. I'm going to give this to Andy Barrett, so pay attention, Andy. I got DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Jaden Reed, and Thielen. So we got to bench 2. He said needs 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Metcalf, Adams, Wilson, Reed, Thielen. What do we got?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going all in on the Jets receiving core at this point. They're both great players, but I'm leading Devontae Adams here. So I'm going to play him. I'm going to sit Garrett Wilson. I'm playing DK Metcalf tonight. Again, it's a very friendly matchup. He might be a little boomer bust lately, but the boom weeks can still be so good. And then I think I'm going to play Adam Thielen over Jaden Reed. That could come back to haunt me, but man, Thielen has just been a target hog when he's healthy, and he gets a great matchup this week against Tampa.
Keep the questions coming in the YouTube chat. We'll keep getting them in all the way up before kickoff on Thursday night. We're still here to help you. But let's also remember that there's Saturday football. You know how much I love Saturday football, but we got a bunch of it. By the time we get to Sunday, there's going to be like a game and a half left. Chargers at Patriots, Broncos at Bengals, Cardinals at Rams. Those are our 3 games from there. So we figured we'd do a little lock it in. Well, we'll take a look at some players from Saturday's action that we are comfortable locking it in. Again, Chargers at Patriots, Broncos at Bengals, Cardinals at Rams. Those are our 3 games for everybody paying attention for your playoff lineups. Andy Behrens, give me somebody from Saturday you are ready to lock on into this thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in Drake Maye. He's been a little bit of a party, even though, okay, he throws an interception every week. That's a small problem right now. But he's coming off 3 straight games with 20-plus fantasy points. He's running the ball proactively again, and he's doing it effectively. He's facing the Chargers this week, and while the season-long numbers look really good for that defense, particularly in terms of scoring, they've actually given up 67 total points and 861 total yards over the last 2 weeks. We can pretty much bank on 30 or more rushing yards from Maye in any given week in any matchup. He's averaging 38 per game in his starts. If you're a New England fan, I'm sure you've spent the last 2 or 3 months just sort of daydreaming about the potential of this offense. If you actually get a retooled receiving room next year, maybe T. Higgins finds his way onto the roster. Regardless, though, Maye has still been super useful for fantasy managers in this year's system.
All right, Sal, we're going to go in honor of yesterday and Beyonce. Give me who you're going to put a ring on it. You like it, then you put a ring. Go ahead.
No, that was good. I'm going to go with Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos here. Sutton last week failed to top 10 fantasy points for the first time in 2 months. Now, real life, 5 catches, 51 yards. It was a fine performance. Wasn't enough to cost you a week in fantasy, but definitely didn't help you win. But if you were able to survive last week, get to your championship, or maybe you're in your toilet bowl, this is the week that you're going to get paid off because Sutton is taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. They allow over 360 yards of total offense per game to opposing offenses, the 5th highest number in the league, and specifically to passing games, they allow the 6th most receiving touchdowns and 7th most receiving yards per game this year. Sutton has faced bottom 10 secondary 7 times this year. That's what the Bengals are this week. And entering that week, when that defense was a bottom 10 secondary, he's feasting on these opponents. He's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game on 8 targets per game. We got to see Bo Nix get a little bit right last week, not throwing multiple interceptions. I'm confident enough in this matchup for Sutton to go out there, finish as a top 20 receiver and somebody who has to be locked into your lineup.
Andy Behrens, give me somebody that's going to play Rudolph and guide their team's sleigh all the way to the promised land.
Yeah, listen, if you have Chase Brown on a roster, times are good, right? You might be sweating Denver's defense a little bit. They allow only 3.9 yards per carry on the season. Brown is just on an incredible run, though. He's cleared 100 total yards in 6 of his last 7 games. And in that 7th game, he had 94 yards and a touchdown. So he's just as locked in as it gets. He's also caught 34 passes over these last 7 games. So we never have to worry about game flow with this guy, and that is a rarity at running back. Brown is now over 1,200 scrimmage yards for the season. He's scored 11 touchdowns. He's about to hit 1,000 rushing yards, likely this week. Even in a challenging matchup against a good run defense, he is unbenchable, pretty much as unbenchable and locked in as he can possibly be. We can pretty much pencil in, I would say, 110 total yards, maybe 120 and a score.
All right, Sal, we'll close this off with one more. Your favorite fat guy. Who's going full Santa Claus and delivering presents?
Oh, man, I'm going to have to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. And look, it should be obvious if you took this guy in the 2nd round of your draft that he should be in your fantasy championship lineup, but that's just sadly not the case. He hasn't been performing as a 2nd round pick, arguably the worst pick in fantasy through the first 5 to 6 rounds. Those guys that you can't miss on, what do you want them to be when you draft them that early? You want them to be consistent and occasionally have these monster performances. But that's not the case with Marvin Harrison all year long. Whether it's his own play, efficiency, being a rookie, or maybe even the play calling, he's not getting a lot of catchable targets being used downfield. It hasn't come together, but the one time it did come together this year, way back in week 2, Harrison was the wide receiver 1 overall in the week, 130 yards, multiple touchdowns against the Rams, who he faces this week. And although their defense has gotten healthier since then, they're still giving up a lot of production to opposing offenses and wide receivers. Make sure Marvin Harrison is in your lineup this week. I've gotten a lot of questions already about if you start him or not. You're starting him this week.
Speaking of a lot of questions, let's get to Make Your Pick, where we help everybody out with some questions. Again, you can keep them coming in the YouTube chat. We'll also help you there. But the first question comes from Esteban. Right. Yeah, sure. We'll call it that. Sit 2. Charbonnet, A.J. Brown with no Hurts, McLaurin, or Brian Thomas. Full PPR. Thanks, Ask FFL. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Man, this is a good reminder that when you get to championship week, the rosters are so good. The people that you have to actually sit are so good. A.J. Brown, as you mentioned, there's probably no Jalen Hurts this week. Also, A.J. Brown dealing with a knee issue, so I'm probably going to sit him here. That seems crazy to say. You got to start Brian Thomas, right? He's like the wide receiver 6 on the season. And now, given the injuries in that receiving corps, he's just getting peppered with targets. So especially in full PPR, you got to go Brian Thomas. And I think I would also play Zach Charbonnet tonight. The Bears defense, you look back at the last 8 games, I want to say they've given up 9 double-digit fantasy performances to opposing running backs. Somebody goes off against them absolutely every week. And of course, this week, Charbonnet has that full backfield workload all to himself.
All right, the next question comes in from Rob. Rob, this will go to Sal. Rob asks, wise one. You missed a chance there, Rob. You should have said 3 wise men, but whatever. For championship, RB need 1. Alvin Kamara, Isaac Rorendo, Zach Charbonnet, quarterback, Justin Herbert, or Sam Darnold. Thanks and good luck to you. Sal, good luck to you. Let's figure this out for him.
Yeah, I think at the running back position, it just comes down to health to make it really easy. I'm not sure Kamara is going to play this week, still not practicing. Herendo's dealing with multiple injuries, as we touched on earlier. So give me Zach Charbonnet at the running back position tonight. This is a guy that last week it was weird. He was named the captain. He doesn't basically play. He's the 3rd RB, but I think a lot of that had to do with injury. He's practicing in full now this week. There's no Kenneth Walker. This guy averages over 20 touches per game without Walker this year and has been a top 10 running back in those situations. So give me Zach Charbonnet. And then it comes down to these 2 quarterbacks. Really no bad decision here. Herbert was great last week. He finally got back from not looking healthy, looked completely healthy last week, took off and was running. But I got to go with Sam Darnold, who's just been looking fantastic lately. 9 touchdowns to 1 interception in his last 3 games. He's playing in a game with the 2nd highest total on the Sunday slate and on the weekend slate. So I'll take Darnold. I'll take Charbonnet.
Rob, we would have also accepted We 3 Kings of Orient. Go ahead. You could just work on it for next time. Stephanie asking our next question. This one will go to Andy Behrens. Keenan Allen, Jalen McMillan, Malik Neighbors, or Ladd McConkey. Pick 2. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going Keenan tonight. Talked about him at the top of the show. Volume is really flowing his way. He's coming off an excellent game. He's been great for about a month and a half now. So you got to play him. And then, this is so difficult because we get the Saturday games, right? We're probably going to know Malik Neighbors' status by tomorrow. It would be great to see him actually practice. He's picked up a toe injury. That's a concern. His quarterback, definitely a concern. So if I had to set this right now, it would be Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey's been great this year. He's the most likely Chargers receiver to actually find the end zone. That's where I would lean here, but I'm still holding out hope that we get really good news on Neighbors tomorrow. But if we don't, it's got to be McConkey.
One more quick in here. Michael77 says, Ask FFL need 2 between DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, Tyrone Tracy Jr., or Jamison Williams. What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, I'll start by taking the squeaky wheel and Garrett Wilson, who it seems like this week Devontae Adams has a chance of even missing this game. He's not practicing yet. The Jets are massive underdogs to the Bills. Should throw 40-plus times. That should work in the favor of Garrett Wilson. And then give me DJ Moore here. As I stated earlier, he's a home underdog. I think this Bears offense is going to threaten for a 300-plus yard passing day for Caleb Williams. That bodes well for DJ Moore, who, since they changed play callers to Thomas Brown, has at least 7 targets in every game.
All right, we'll get back to your questions, but first we got to take a look at the weekend injury report. Again, we got games all over the weekend, so we'll break these down. From the Saturday action, Gus Edwards out. It looks like J.K. Dobbins may return from injured reserve. Will Dissly is questionable at this point, and much to the dismay of many people trying to play in their championship. James Conner, questionable. We still don't know a status for him. When we move to Sunday and Monday's action, we've got plenty of news here. For did not practice today. Devontae Adams with the hip. Alvin Kamara with the groin, Malik Neighbors, as we mentioned, with the toe, Tony Pollard with the ankle, all did not practice today. And then further complicating all of this, Jalen Hurts with the concussion. He is still in concussion protocol. Tyrone Tracy, the ankle injury, David Njoku with the knee, and CeeDee Lamb out for the season with the shoulder injury we all saw last week. So one question on this, Mike has asked Andy specifically, how do we feel about Hurts? I've got Stafford as a pivot, but he plays Saturday night. What you think? Andy Behrens, what do you think?
First of all, this is my old friend, Mike Marchetti. I might have known him for 30 years. He could just text me. He doesn't have to send a tweet, anything like that. He could just ask. This is the manager of the Wharf Rats, big Wharf Rats fan. Yeah, you're right to be worried about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts isn't practicing. He's in concussion protocol. we'd have to get some spectacular news on Friday to feel confident in him. So you're probably going to have to find a pivot. I wish there were a better answer than Matthew Stafford, who's been a little, they went absolutely nuclear against Buffalo, right? Put up 44 points. Stafford was great. Since then, 2 games since then, 270 total passing yards over 2 games. So it's not ideal, but I would go ahead and play him over Jalen Hurts. I just don't think that you're going to get Hurts this week.
So then what about this one for Zendog Jeff, which is timely for tonight? If Hurts can't go, Caleb, Bo, you just sort of were hesitant on Stafford, and Maye available. Playing in the Toilet Bowl championship game, Yahoo consolation bracket, which earns me back half my entry fee. Help flush me to win. What do you think in that situation, Andy?
Yeah, I actually really like Caleb and Bo Nix. They're both strong plays. I'd go with either one of them over Matthew Stafford, even over Drake Maye, who I'd like. And I'm also assuming that Jalen Hurts is not going to go, right? It would have to be an incredible turnaround for him to be able to play this week. So I think I'd probably go Caleb Williams tonight. I can tell you, because I'm in Chicago right now, conditions are lovely. This is it's like mid 40s, high 40s today. The wind isn't too bad. There's no rain. It's fine. It's going to be good weather conditions.
All right, we'll keep you updated on it. In the meantime, we're going to take some more questions. Before we do that, let's turn to our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks, where we're identifying some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. It's a huge matchup in the NFC North. Packers versus Vikings, 2 of the best teams in the entire NFL at this point. They're taking each other on. This is, who knew? Glory be to God, it can happen. It's a Sunday game at 1 p.m. Eastern. Packers favored by 1, the over-under 48.5. And gentlemen, I'll go first here. When you talk game changers, it's clear at this point that Josh Jacobs is the workhorse for everything for the Packers offense. This isn't complicated. Josh Jacobs is exactly who Josh Jacobs has been through the entirety of his career. Once he gets rolling, he does not come off the field. You can't get him to walk away from the field, and he gets all the hard yards you could possibly imagine. He did everything he could to get me a win over the weekend in our own fantasy contest on this show. Came up a couple of yards short and broke my heart. But the fact is, when you talk about the production, you know the carries will be there. You know the volume will be there. You know that he is going to get extra yards. You know he will get touchdowns. He is always going to be a fantasy game changer. I'm just keeping it simple. Andy Behrens, give us your fantasy game changer.
Yeah, for me, this is Jordan Addison. And he spent the first basically half of his season as a boom-bust guy, low volume, occasional big plays. Over these last 6 weeks, which coincides with Minnesota playing its best football of the season, Addison has been a locked-in, must-start wide receiver 1. In those 6 games, 35 catches, 508 yards, 6 touchdowns. If you extrapolate that level of production over a full season, you get 99 receptions for over 1,400 yards. And that's about a third of a year. I mean, he's been playing that well. When teams attempt to smother Justin Jefferson, Addison invariably goes off. But even when they balance the coverage, it's still 8 targets, 5 or 6 catches, good shot at finding the end zone. Addison delivered one of those early season boom games against Green Bay already. He had 79 total yards earlier in the season, 2 touchdowns against them. He certainly has a chance to do something very similar this week in a matchup that delivered 60 total points earlier in the season.
Sal, give me your fantasy game changer in this one.
Yeah, I got to go with Aaron Jones here. Aaron Jones is somebody that the Packers didn't want this offseason. They chose Josh Jacobs over him. Most of the fantasy community, including myself, didn't seem too confident in Aaron Jones based on him falling into the 5th and 6th round of fantasy drafts, and we were more interested in the backups Ty Chandler. And what does Aaron Jones do? He laughed at all of us. He's now played in every single game this year. Sure, he's left for a couple of drives here and there, as most running backs do, but he's averaging over 19 opportunities per game. He's averaging over 5 yards per touch. Continues to be the same efficient Aaron Jones. The first time he played the Packers in a revenge game this year, season high 26 touches, 136 total yards in that game. He was fantastic. He's entering a game with a high total. They're at home. They're favorites. Sam Darnold is playing well. Expect him to move the ball. Jones to be involved in the passing game, in the red zone, everywhere, and for him to top 100 total yards again in 20+ touches.
All right, before we get to your questions, it's the last Thursday show of the year. So indulge us for a moment. It's time for some never too early, way too early. I can't believe we're doing these bold predictions for next season. For 2025, our bold early predictions. This will help everybody as you're thinking out your draft strategy, because what could go wrong with the bold prediction? All right, Andy Behrens, you are the king of bold predictions on this show. So go ahead and give us your bold prediction for 2025.
Yeah, if you'll allow me to be a meathead Bears fan for just a second, I will say that I think Caleb Williams is going to absolutely embarrass everyone who felt the need to hot take after every incompletion or sack this year. And I think he's going to finish as a top 8, possibly top 5 fantasy quarterback next year. There is a national narrative about Williams that just has very little relationship to his actual season. Yes, he's taken too many sacks. It's been a chaotic environment. And yes, the Bears have discovered new and inventive ways to lose games. But the progress from the Shane Waldron era to the present day has been pretty obvious. Williams has 10 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions over his last 5 games. For the season, he only has 5 interceptions on over 500 attempts. The other sneaky great trait that Caleb has is rushing ability. He's up to 442 rushing yards right now. And that's without a rushing touchdown, which is just purely fluky. He has the 7th most rushing yards of any player at the quarterback position. So he's fully a member of the dual threat club. My scenario here, I guess, would require the Bears to actually get a coaching hire right and also build up the offensive line. And they have historic problems doing those things. But no one should be shocked if Williams levels up and becomes an every week fantasy starter next year.
I love that call by you, by the way. I think Williams is going to be a superstar. Sal, what do you think? What's your bold prediction? Way too early bold prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be, it's around Brian Thomas, and it was going to be that this guy will be a top 10 wide receiver next year, and he's basically doing that this year. It's going to be that he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver. In the last 2 weeks, he's been doing that. So I'm going to go out on a limb and change it from a top 5 fantasy receiver next year to, let's say, the number 1 overall wide receiver in fantasy football.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian Thomas this year is number 1 in receiving yards amongst rookies when there was 3 other guys drafted ahead of him and talked a lot more this offseason about than Brian Thomas. Most people talked about Thomas's flaws as maybe a one-trick speed pony, and he's shown everybody that that's completely wrong. When they changed their quarterbacks to Mac Jones this year, and yes, that's the situation Thomas is dealing with. Mac Jones, poor play calling, and a poor offensive line. We got to see Thomas go from the vertical threat in this offense to move into the slot more, to work in the short to intermediate parts of the field, more in-breaking routes, and honestly, since then, he's become an even better receiver, showing that he can produce after the catch, win at the top of routes, and over this past month of the season, he is a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the number 2 fantasy wide receiver. I think that continues this week against a poor Titans secondary that he had 8 catches for 86 yards earlier this year against, and it carries over into next year where he'll be taken at the end of the 2nd, early 3rd round and finish as the wide receiver 1 overall.
I love that also. Man, you guys are 2 for 2. I'll give you one that Andy Behrens is going to like. A bold prediction for 2025. Look, you talked about Caleb Williams earlier. Part of the reason I believe Caleb is going to ascend is because Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson is going to be his head coach next year, which means a normal offensive coordinator is coming to Detroit. And when a normal offensive coordinator comes in that may not be quite as gifted at trying to get wide receivers open, they're going to look at the weapons and they're going to say, we got a guy here, Sam Laporta, that hasn't really been needed in this offense the same way. Just hasn't had to be utilized the same way. I think a normal offensive coordinator coming in, especially the way we're seeing teams gravitate towards tight end usage, is going to say, hey, we got a weapon here. We need to feed more. This year wasn't Laporta's year because the Lions are winning a bunch of games and their offensive coordinator's on a heater with the motion he does pre-snap to get wide receivers open. I don't believe Laporta has lost his magic. I just believe the offense isn't being called in a way that makes him a primary target or threat. That will change next year with the different offensive coordinator. I think you're safe if you're keeping Laporta. You're safe if you're looking at Laporta next year. I think Laporta is still a difference maker. Going to be tight end 1 next year with the new offensive coordinator. Look at that. Look at that. Andy Behrens. That's just me willing in some Christmas magic. All right, hurry up offense. We're going to pull everybody together, throw 25 seconds on the clock, get a bunch of these questions answered. The first one comes from Mark. Mark says, don't like either Tua or Geno this week. You're telling me Bryce Young looks like a good option. Agree? Andy Behrens, what do you think?
I do agree with the last part of this. Bryce Young does look like a good option. He has rushing touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games, and he gets the Tampa Bay Bucks. So this is a really friendly spot. I do like Geno Smith as well. I don't think you can go wrong there. But sure, if your gut is telling you Bryce Young, I can't argue with the recent production.
Trevor James next. DJ Moore's in my lineup. Should I keep him there or start Cooper Kupp or Smith instead? What do you think, Sal?
I think I'm keeping DJ Moore there. Like, Cooper Kupp's name value seems like he should be in your lineup, but the last couple of weeks could be small sample, but he looks like the clear 3rd option behind Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams in this offense. Devonta Smith concerns when it comes to Jalen Hurts. So give me DJ Moore. He's been over 11 fantasy points or 7 targets, as mentioned earlier, every game since changing play callers.
Next question up comes from Nick, who says, Kraft, Kincaid, or Okonkwo? What do you think? PPR. What do you think, Andy Behrens?
Oh, gosh, man. Okonkwo is so tempting because in each of the last 2 weeks, he's seen double-digit targets. They are not the highest quality targets, though. I think I would still lean Tucker Kraft here. He's been so good after the catch. He's piling up touchdowns. It is the right passing offense to attach yourself to, and it's a game. Again, when the Packers and Vikings played earlier this year, they gave us 60 points.
From the YouTube chat, Steven says, from Twitter. Only question for me for Steven is defense. Seattle versus Chicago, Green Bay versus Minnesota, or Denver versus Cincinnati. What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, I'll be going with Seattle tonight against Chicago, although I do think Chicago, as I've said a couple times in this one, does have a really nice chance to open it up in the air. I'm terrified to play any defense, even Denver against the Cincinnati Bengals, and then a high total game. I don't really want to be touching Green Bay against Minnesota.
All right, Patton McRoch in the YouTube chat says, T. Higgins or Jawan Jennings? Andy Behrens, what do you think?
It's a small lean to T. Higgins for me. I like Jawan Jennings this week against a banged-up Detroit defense. It should be a shootout of a game, or as much as the Niners can accommodate that. But I can't bench T. Higgins. I know you're a little bit worried about the matchup, but he's so good, and Joe Burrow is playing at such a ridiculous level right now that you want to be tied to that offense.
The next one in the YouTube chat, Warren Corpus. Everyone with Josh Allen in their championship wants to know, play him or bench him, Sal?
With Josh Allen, yes, you're playing Josh Allen. He is my highest projected quarterback for 25.5 points this week. If you got to your fantasy championship with 9 points from Josh Allen last week, congratulations. He's about to pay you back against the Jets this week.
Yeah, Jets. All right, Fizz the Fisherman. That's so close to Fitz. We'll give it to you. I hope you guys are doing well. You too, Fizz. Pick two, Charbonnet, Chuba, or Ford. What do you think, Andy?
Good question, Fizz. I would sit Jerome Ford here. Charbonnet, again, great setup this week against Chicago. Chicago's been so generous to opposing backs, and I don't know how you can even think about benching Chuba Hubbard right now. Coming off a dominant game, and he's got a great matchup against a pretty user-friendly Bucs defense.
Derek in the YouTube chat says, need to flex. Metcalf, Dowdle, McMillan, or James Conner. What do you think, Sal?
If James Conner plays, he's number one on this list for me. The matchup is great, and when he's actually out there and healthy, he sees a full workhorse back. And then give me DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is going to operate in a situation. I don't think he's fully healthy yet, but he could still shoe in 7+ targets and downfield usage with Geno, who will take those shots.
All right, we got another one coming in from Lord Humongous. Can I trust DK, or do I swap him out for McMillan? Start Caleb tonight or Kyler on Saturday? A lot of questions there from Lord Humongous with the disturbing mask on, Andy Behrens.
Yeah, let's not focus on the word trust here. I don't know if you can trust DK exactly, but certainly his ceiling is exceptionally high. He's an incredibly talented receiver with a great matchup. So I would play him over McMillan. I know that McMillan has found the end zone a couple times. You're playing DK Metcalf. And then I'm going Caleb as well.
I am 1,000% sure that Dan is giving me this just to try and make me say the name, producer Dan. La Estrelita Emazaga. Flex, Allen or Hawkinson? What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, I'm going with Keenan Allen here tonight. He projects as a top 20 wide receiver this week for maybe the first time this entire season for me. I'm thinking you're getting more target volume. You're getting more upside in the red zone for Allen compared to Hawkinson, who's competing with not only Jefferson, but Addison, who's been surging.
La Estrelita Emazaga. I think I nailed that. I don't know. Here's what I know. This is our last Thursday night episode. We're still going strong on Sunday, though. I know we got a lot of action spread out all over the place. We hope you'll join us on Sunday. And we got a lot of fantasy football to go there. In the meantime, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everybody behind the scenes. I say this every week, but we genuinely mean it. They do all the hard work so that we can sit here and yell about fantasy football. Without them, there'd be no show. Without every one of you that take the time and give us the time to listen and watch every single week, we wouldn't have jobs. We are forever grateful for what you give in our lives, and we hope that this show has given you incredible joy throughout the course of the season. We will be back Sunday morning, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. You know all the time zones. I'm not smart enough to do math. In the meantime, for Sal Vetri and Andy Behrens, I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much, not just for tonight, but for all year, for watching Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks.